Welcome everyone to the Green Dialogue, and today we have a special guest, Justin Gish from Kalamazoo. Welcome, Justin. And Justin is a sustainability planner, and so hope to find out what that means. And then we'll open it up for some conversation. Um, Justin, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to be quiet now and let you introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sounds good. No, yeah, thanks for having me. Yep, Justin Gish, Sustainability Planner, City of Kalamazoo. Been in this position a little over a year, started in May of 2023. Position was totally new. The position was created to oversee our community sustainability plan, which was approved by the City Commission here in Kalamazoo in 2022. And then that plan was created due to the City Commission's proclamation of a climate emergency in 2019. So, for city governments, it's a very accelerated timeline. 2019, you had proclamation. 2022, you had a plan. 2023, you had a staff member. So here I am. And my guiding document is that community sustainability plan. It's the big overarching goal for this plan is net zero by 2025 or 2050, sorry. 2025 would be incredibly ambitious. But 2050, that's where a lot of my focus is on. But basically, I get every other environmental problem that isn't already taken up by someone else or that someone else no longer wants to deal with. So yeah, gosh, it runs the gamut. So we've done, I was in charge of the No Mow May campaign, which I can talk about how contentious that was. Urban deer is starting to heat up again, trying to figure out that problem. Invasive species, native plantings, some zoning regulations, around native plantings or curb lawns and things like that. So I kind of have this odd public and kind of like internal position where if I'm not out in the field doing something, I need to be in the office trying to figure out how to get the city to net zero. So I was going to give a big presentation over kind of the baseline, but I'm sick of going over that so formally. But one of the big things that I did when I started was I created a greenhouse gas emissions baseline, one for the community of Kalamazoo and one for the city operation. So those are two kind of benchmarks or that where I can use to kind of try to figure out how we can get to net zero. Because before we didn't have that. So even when we said net zero, it's like, what does that even mean? Maybe we're already there. We wouldn't be, but we had no idea where the finish line was. So now we have a better idea. And then I guess I'll say, so in 2022, the city of Kalamazoo was responsible for 50,053 metric tons of CO2e. So that's the number that I'm working with there. And then if you push that out to 2050, like 2,000 metric tons a year that I have to kind of eliminate from city operations. How I do that, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. So I guess, after all that, I'll just open up for some questions and I can start pulling up graphs and other documents if people are interested, but I just treat this as an open dialogue. See where you're at and what problems you all are having.
Thank you, Justin. That's a quick intro. Do you have any microphone settings? It's a little bit of a low signal. I can hear you, but it's not as clear as it might be. We can get by with it if you can't adjust any.
Yeah, it looks like I'm cranked all the way up.
You don't have a microphone on your headset, do you?
No.
Okay. We can get by with it. It'll be fine. Might have to turn up our volume just a little bit. Well, No Mow May is something we've discussed a few times here in these dialogues. I know folks are probably interested in your experience with that, but yeah, what questions do people have?
Well, related to that, I'd be kind of curious about just the whole regulation of lawns and height of grasses and all that sort of stuff, because that's probably an ongoing issue anywhere relates to no mow, maize, but it's a larger issue too, right? Kind of figuring out, okay, is that a native plant garden or is that just somebody who has been mowing their yard? Can't hear you.
All right, I changed some settings, but it looks
Yep,
like I'm
now
back
we can hear you fine.
Yeah, so I tried to make it louder, but it looks like I just made it so you couldn't hear me at all. Yeah, so in May, what the city does, we get ahead of it. April, we send out notices saying for May, we are going to relax our tall weed and grass ordinance. Usually, if your grass gets over 8 inches, we send someone out, give you a ticket or a fine or a warning or whatever. In May, we just don't do that. Yeah, so the grass can go longer than 8 inches in May, help the pollinators in theory, and then go back to that. With just the native gardens, I won't say we're lax, but we understand that folks don't want to only plant turf grass. So the way the ordinance is read, anything that didn't get there by itself, we wouldn't ticket. So, if you have, I don't know, what would grow everywhere, some giant mullein and an 8-inch grass, that seems pretty obvious that that's not a deliberately planted field or garden. But if you have black-eyed Susans and coneflowers and things like that, that looks more intentional and planted, that would count as a native yard. There's no regulations that say you can't have a native yard. And the inverse of that, there's no regulations that say you have to have turf grass. So if it looks intentional and it's fairly well maintained, and I say fairly well because that really only goes on the curb lawn. So the curb lawn, you can't have very high, even native plants in the curb lawn because it's a safety issue. You don't want to have 6-foot sunflowers, in the entire curb lawn. You can't see around the corner and things like that. So there's just kind of explaining that to folks who want to put in these gardens is pretty important. Understanding the why behind some of the stuff, because folks will immediately go to, it's draconian, you hate native plants if I can't cover the turf lawn, and 10-foot cup plants. It's not that, it's just that, this is a city and it has to function somewhat like a city. I don't know if that answered the question, and we could do better in these codes and ordinances. Right now it says, it talks about noxious weeds. Noxious weeds tend to be like poison ivy and things like that, things that could cause some type of human harm. But we could clean up that language and be more specific about native plants and things like that. And what weeds are. But yeah, I mean, that was a big thing. So in May, we don't ticket. We kind of tell people, hey, here's what we're doing. We gave out these signs. So yeah, we printed a bunch of these signs. We handed them out in April to folks so that kind of their neighbors would know what was going on. And then on the back, we just kind of have general pollinator information. So when June rolls around, you can just flip over the sign. But the idea there was to say, someone's not familiar with this program, they're walking down the street and they see this wild yard. They see the sign, they could click the QR code there and go to the city's website where they get some information about what No Mow May is and what the thinking is behind that. Yeah, I don't know.
Sarah, you had a question?
That was basically similar to my question. So then my next one was regarding the deer, as you were speaking of, what have you been implementing to work with the deer and help with that? Or have you been implementing anything?
Sorry, can you repeat that one? I must have missed that.
It was just similar to what John said, but then my next follow-up was what you were talking about with the deer. Are you implementing anything, or what's the manage, like, are you managing it? What are you doing with that?
God, no, nothing. Yeah, right now, so before I came on, City of Kalamazoo created an urban deer management plan that was like softly adopted by the city commission. They viewed it, they didn't make a recommendation, but that has, the plan lays out steps. So like the final step, the very end of the plan would be like a call. We're not even there yet. We're still in the education phase. Just learning more about that, it's almost like a no-win. I won't say no, I don't know. You get some results. As soon as you stop calling, the deer come right back. You see all the articles I've seen is, that you have a call in 2024, population dips in 2025. And then if you don't call in 2025, it's right back to where it was in 2026. They're resilient. They like where we live. They like edge habitat and food and no predators. And that's pretty much the city. I think some of the concerns aren't as strong like. And there I'm talking mostly about people are very concerned about car crashes. Looking at the car crash data here in Kalamazoo, I think we've had 664 over the last 10 years. And most of that is clustered along major highways. So we have 94 that run through Kalamazoo and 131. And those are pretty much where the accidents happen. But I'm getting a lot of neighborhood folks who are saying they're very concerned about cars and deer collisions and things like that. And you just don't see a lot of that data. So we're looking to maybe place some signage or some public outreach again, where we just say, hey, explain to folks what the rut is, why deer would be more active this time of year, and to kind of just be more mindful. The cull's just tricky. I mean, Ann Arbor did it and they stopped, and everyone seems to do it for a year or two, and then it's costly. The one thing that I do like that no one else likes, well, two things. One thing I joke, I'm just going to reintroduce wolves, and that will knock down the deer population, bring back some large predators. But we brought a DNR guy in to talk at our Natural World Symposium, and he said, so traditionally hunting regulations state that you have to be 500 feet from an occupied structure or have the permission of the owner occupier of that structure to hunt. And that is with a rifle or a crossbow or a bow and arrow or anything. They removed that stipulation from hunting with a bow and arrow or crossbow. So in theory, you could hunt in the city of Kalamazoo with a bow and arrow or a crossbow on your own property, and not have to get the approval of all of your neighbors to hunt. If the city of Kalamazoo lifted their ban on discharging bows and arrows and crossbows in the city, that means that people could hunt in the city and do their own deer culls, essentially. Nobody's really thrilled about that either, so I think we're just gonna have to live with the deer. I don't know if that answered any of the problems. You can't transport deer. I get questions about that. You can't move wildlife in Michigan without approval from the DNR, and they're never going to approve transportation of deer just because of CD. What is it? Oh, what's their chronic wasting disease? CWD. So we're stuck with them, essentially.
Okay,
Well-
thank you. I was just curious because we have a culling here that's been going on for several years, so I wasn't sure what you were doing.
Oh, yeah, no, that's great. I mean, even the thoughts or the suggestion of a cull drew out hundreds of people to City Hall in protest of. I don't think we'd ever get it passed here. We're just not as ruled. The cull works for you all, though?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm very happy with it.
there's no public or what's the public response to the?
I mean, somebody else might have something else to say or different, but I mean, we hear a little bit, but not much, because I think most people are pretty pleased with it. I don't know, that's my opinion.
That's
Yeah.
my experience too, and just talking to people, that people were, I don't hear really any complaints about it. And, it took a while though, because, I think Lori could probably correct me. I think they're taking about 300 a year or something. But it's really, if I understand correctly, no expense, because the bow folks are volunteers, but they have to be kind of approved. We're just not letting anybody go out there and start shooting deer in the township. But that's my understanding. And the police do some firearm shooting in public spaces, preserve areas, and maybe even parks. But yeah, I haven't heard anybody really complain.
And
We
then-
all love the deer, but accidents, people
Yeah,
complain always about what the deer are eating in their backyards.
no, it's the management. So where are folks hunting? On
They-
public land or their own
Yes.
property? Public land?
They're, sorry, this is Kim. They restricted, and correct me if I'm wrong, Leroy or Brian, but our parks, our natural areas, and the hunters have to be approved. They get sharpshooters from law enforcement, and I'm not sure if they have other hunters that apply. But what they do is the meat from the deer goes to the local food banks as well. But something else that you might consider, just to show people how deer degrade an area when they overpopulate, that they've done a couple spots in East Lansing, is in some of the nature areas, they've fenced off sections so the deer can't get in there. And then they show the difference between what grows when the deer are kept, you know, at a minimum as opposed to when they overgraze.
Yeah,
And there's a big difference between the native and invasive plants that survive.
Yep. Yeah. I think as we get further down, I think kind of demonstration piece people can go out and see it for themselves. So it's a good idea.
We're a little less dense than Kalamazoo as well, which might make a difference. And we have about a couple thousand acres of park and land preserves too, which is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest problems here in Kalamazoo too is we don't own like the biggest preserves. So Western Michigan University owns Asylum Lake, and Kleinstock, and that's large urban nature preserves. But no, that's good information. Yeah, well, I'm glad you were all able to do it.
I wanted to ask you about Reimagine Kalamazoo, which looks like a pretty interesting project, as well as some of the elements of your sustainability plan, which include a circular economy. And it seems like a fairly robust vision that's emerging. And how do you make it so inclusive? And is it working?
Yes, it's working. Kalamazoo, the inclusive parts. I mean, Kalamazoo's it's a weird, kind of cool, hip college town. I think a lot of folks are really interested in this stuff. A lot of the citizens kind of push for this stuff. So it's not like we're forcing anything on people. If anything, we're not doing enough for everyone here. So these plants, I mean, Imagine Kalamazoo is the city's master plan, and in there you're going to see tucked in a lot of sustainability issues. That's what folks here want generally. They can't always agree on how we get to where we want to go, but they all want to get to the same spot. The circular economy piece is interesting. So we have a solid waste millage that does a lot of kind of neat things with recycling and brush pickup. One of the problems, or it's not a problem, but kind of just the way things go. And my position is I'm in community planning and economic development. So I'm over here, and then the solid waste stuff is held over here in public services. So I don't really get to meet the solid waste coordinator too often. We started about the same time. We knew each other coming in. We both have similar vision for the city. So there's no friction there, but just the fact that we're kind of siloed is difficult. But we meet together, maybe every other week to kind of talk about this. But yeah, so he's really leading all of the recycling charges. We're working on trying to get a municipal composting system going. There's not a lot of interest from the city or the directors of the city to take on another program or offer another service. So we're probably looking to maybe contract that out with My Green Michigan. So what we're going to do is similar municipalities have done it too, is kind of create compost drop-off locations. So rather than every house having a 64-gallon bucket, 90, whatever, those green Herbie Kirby's, we put some at neighborhood centers or schools or things like that, and then folks can walk down the compost and do it that way. So that's the big push there with the circular economy. It's just trying to capture some of the food waste going into landfills and turn that back into soil. Yeah, those are the big things. And then recycling, we're always trying to get the recycling numbers up. Chris is working on getting every household in the city a recycling bucket, but we're not quite there yet. So
Thank you. I'll try and share the documents that you shared with me. If my computer functions properly, I think. What other questions do people have for Justin?
Well, Justin, I've heard that there's an effort to do solarize down in Kalamazoo, the solarize approach. And then also, we've done quite a bit in the township with the township facilities, putting solar, arrays on top of buildings, fire stations, and the township hall. And I wonder, what have you been kind of doing in the solar area?
Yeah, this is exciting. This is cutting edge. Might be for your ears only for now. I'm kidding, but we're just getting to this point. So the Solarize piece, yes, we're going to try to bring Solarize down to Kalamazoo. That's going to be November. So I have a My Healthy Climate Corps sustainability liaison, Alexa. If I move, you can see her in the background probably. But that's her whole job, is to electrify Kalamazoo. So she's working on the Inflation Reduction Act, how to get kind of those federal dollars into Kalamazoo and get folks excited about that. But also, Solarize. So you want to shout out Alexa here. And then, yeah, so, all right, you will not escape a slideshow then, I guess. Sorry, because you asked that question. So, yeah, I explored putting solar panels on city buildings. And it was tough. It didn't seem to work here in Kalamazoo, and I'll try to explain why. So can you see this presentation here?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So well, it takes a minute. So again, 2050. So 50,000, 53 metric tons of CO2e. Got to cut by 2,000 metric tons every year. So looking at our emissions here at the city, so 58% scope 2 emissions. Every city is different. I'm learning that. Absolutely different. Ann Arbor is Ann Arbor, Kalamazoo is Kalamazoo. Meridian Township is going to be Meridian Township, but this is what we look like here. So, all right, scope 2 emissions, that's all electricity use. All right, that's what I got to tackle. But the problem is that the city of Kalamazoo uses 50 million kilowatt hours electricity. And again, I don't know, maybe Meridian's the same, but we just use a ridiculous amount of electricity here. We have a wastewater treatment plant in the city of Kalamazoo that serves the entire county. So we're just taking everyone's waste, cleaning it, just using all of this electricity. When I first came on the job, I was thinking rooftop solar was the answer as well. So this is the largest energy using building in the city outside of wastewater. This is our public safety headquarters and what was courts. So I see this building, I'm like, all right, this is it. 50,000 square feet, flat roof, no obstructions, load that up with solar panels and we're good to go. Loading this entire building up with solar panels would only give me 14% of that building's energy use, which equates to 0.6% of the entire city's energy use. And it would cost about $700,000. So it's like, all right, I was disheartened there. And then I get the solar parking lot question. Even if best case scenario, just measuring this area here, if I use the same kilowatt hours per square foot and apply it to this parking lot, I'd get to half of this building's energy use and 2% of the city's total energy use. So we're taking a different approach. We're going to partner with Consumer Solar to purchase RECs of that 43 million kilowatt hours. It's 50 million kilowatt hours, but we can't enroll streetlights and traffic signals in that. So we're going to purchase RECs for 43 million kilowatt hours. This is a new program Consumers offers. It's a large energy user renewable program or something kind of generic like that. It's going to go online in 2028. And so we enroll in 2024, we go online in 2028. And in the meantime, they're going to build a solar field to meet our demands and the other folks that kind of sign on for this cohort. So it's not as exciting because you don't see the solar panels on the building, but it covers essentially all of our scope 2 emissions. And with this program, we'll essentially have our carbon footprint because that'll take care of about 29, where's my numbers here? About 29 million kilowatt hours or 29,000 metric tons of CO2e will be offset or counterbalanced through the purchase of RECs. So we explored solar panels on city buildings. That building's also the largest good roof we have. So I mean, if this rooftop doesn't cut it, I kind of pivoted trying to find a different solution. We tried to offer consumers some of our fields and wellheads to put solar panels, but they just weren't big enough for them. Consumers just kind of laughed at 20 acres or 50 acres. So this was the next best thing. It hasn't been a tough sell, but folks are skeptical. Nobody really wants to work with. Well, I say nobody. A lot of environmental activists are reluctant to work with consumers, for various reasons. But as a city, this just seemed to make the most sense. I'm constantly talking to folks about how it's, your home is different than every city building that I have to work with. Your home has 2 computers. This office building might have 500 computers and all the crime lab equipment and all the servers. So it's really just apples and oranges. The average household uses, in one of our zip codes, 7,000 kilowatt hours a year. Nationwide, a home will average 10,000 or so. The 3 largest energy users in Kalamazoo average 9.8 million kilowatt hours a year. So it's kind of where we're at.
Where are they going to put that field?
Now, yeah, they haven't told us yet. They're being a little coy about that until we sign up. But it'll be in Michigan. It'll be on our grid. It'll be our regional electricity. And I know there's concerns about solar fields and things like that, but I mean, we environmentalists make these net zero goals, but then we don't want to put solar panels anywhere because of farmland. I don't know. It's catch-22. It's a wicked problem. Kind of whatever. Sorry, I'm a little sensitive on that one because even that question I don't have a good answer. And I understand concerns, but I don't know what else to do.
So
No,
it's
it's
not
a
necessarily
good
going to be in
answer.
Kalamazoo. It's just going to be somewhere where they've got land that they are making it happen.
Gotcha. Correct. Yeah. No. Yeah. There's no space in Kalamazoo. I mean, these are going to be thousands of acres. Yeah. And yeah. I'll show you. Well, yeah. Because context and geography always matters. I'll show you what Kalamazoo looks like. Yeah. It's super dense. I mean, yeah. The biggest plots of land that we have is like a 60-acre brownfield. And then again, yeah, consumers just laughs at that. So. But I don't know. Does anyone get excited about REX? Probably not. It's one thing to drive past the solar field. It's one thing to say.
Oh, it's good to hear your experience, and I think we're all learning our way into the future here. So I'm sure we'll learn from your experience. And, I don't want to interrupt your answer here if
Oh,
you've
I don't
got
even know.
something to pull up, but Kim had a question as well. So
Yeah, no, keep going. It'll buy me some time. I'll just pull up a map to give you some
Right.
context. Yeah, what Kalamazoo looks like.
I was
These-
just gonna ask about brownfields because here in the Lansing area, because of GM and, various supporting auto industry suppliers, we've got a lot of brownfields in the area. And, as far as that for placement of solar panels, I know a lot of people are very concerned about solar panels going up on usable farmland. But,
Yeah.
Kalamazoo is more city than probably Lansing is at this point.
Yes. Yeah, we're always looking at the brownfield piece, but again, yeah, even brownfields aren't big enough. I think when this community solar bill, if it passes, that might open up some smaller companies or folks who might like smaller parcels. So community solar, individual companies can kind of break up consumers' monopoly and produce up to 5 megawatts. Up to 5 megawatts is generally about 50, 60 acres. So then you're getting some of the larger brownfield stuff, but like all the solar developers I've talked to just don't really like these kind of piecemeal, they want to work with one large parcel, one owner, one connection to the grid, one spot. So, you can conceivably create, 1,000-acre parcel of brownfields, but they'd all be disjointed and disconnected. And it gets tricky. Not to say that it shouldn't be done, not to say it couldn't be done, but folks are not excited about it generally.
Sarah?
I was going to ask the same thing in terms of brownfields. So just push it further then. So what do you have, like a plan for the brownfields that you have in your area? Do you have any kind of, I know we have a brownfield something here in Meridian Township or the county or something, but like, do you have a management or anybody that's looking at the brownfields for how to manage those and figure out what to do with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have what's her name? Oh, I know her name. Sorry, what's her title? Sustainable Development Coordinator. So my supervisor, Jamie McCarthy, that's her whole job is brownfields. With brownfields too, though, it's also, you got to ask yourself highest and best use. I know environmentalists think highest and best use of every open parcel is solar panels or native plants. But economic development folks tend to think differently. So yeah, so that I don't want to say friction, but there's that kind of push and pull. So do we give our best brownfield to a solar developer, or do we give our best brownfield to a proper developer who will create jobs? It's one of the P's, the profit and the people part. Maybe not the planet, but.
Kim, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you mentioned the 94 and 131 highways. What about land adjacent to the highways?
Yeah. Well, here I'll show you Kalamazoo. For what? For solar?
Yeah.
again, we got to think about parcel size. It goes back to, yeah, just because it's open land doesn't mean that the city owns it or we can develop it or anything like that. Most of the land adjacent to highways here on 94, you can see it's all developed already. We have the airport here. I mean, if these folks, whoever owned it, wanted to get together and sell that parcel, maybe. It's just scale. And then here's 131. That's all developed there. That's Western's Parkview campus. We're pretty tight here. You can see all the development. Everything's pretty much, there's no open space. And every time you find a little pocket, it's not big enough. This is an old landfill. That's about 60 acres, but you're hemmed in by railroad tracks. There's no transmission lines coming in to hook up any of that. And then you got to find a user for that too. So you put solar panels here. Do these folks want it? This is Consumers Energy locale. So you'd think that if they wanted it, they could have it. Yeah, no, it's just tricky. There's all these little practical concerns. I talked to a company that creates floating solar panels, and I thought, oh, here we have a little retention pond. Maybe we could put that there. That wasn't big enough for them. We could cover Asylum Lake here in solar panels, but I don't think folks would be really thrilled about that either. That lake was big enough, but floating solar panels on this lake would get folks upset. So yeah, it's tricky. Every time you see some open land, you think, why not? And then it just becomes, I mean, rooftops are the same thing. I get rooftops a lot, but every rooftop is owned by a different entity. Parking lots is another one. I guess it's prohibitively expensive to put in solar in an existing parking lot. Generally, creating a new one, you could do that, but again, that's generally going to be behind the meter type stuff. Michigan State has their solar parking lot, and everyone points to that. And then I say, well, did you also know that they generate their own power with their own power plant? So it's not like that solar parking lot is powering Michigan State's campus.
How did you get into this, Justin? What's your background?
Yeah, I spent 10 years in the social services. So I graduated with a philosophy degree years ago and started working in social services, running group homes for folks with disabilities. But I always had an environmental bent. I'm always composted at my home, always kind of paid attention to the natural world. Once I got burned out trying to save individual people, I thought I would try to save the entire world, and got a master's in geography, got some GIS experience, and here I am. So I don't know which one is
awesome.
More fulfilling.
What do you get most excited about at your work right now?
Probably the variety of things I get to work on. I'm not stuck just doing X. I get to do A, B, C, I'll run the gamut. I used to work for the local land conservancy, so I do still enjoy getting outside. I do enjoy not coming home covered in ticks in this job, whereas the land conservancy, that was always going to be it. So yeah, I enjoy getting out in the world. I enjoy the data piece is interesting. So that greenhouse gas baseline report was fun to put together, and kind of go through those numbers and see where we're at as a city.
Is the Kalamazoo Nature Center still active?
Yep, they're active, but I mean, like most things here in Kalamazoo, it's not in Kalamazoo when you think of it. Yeah, but they have an urban nature park downtown. But yeah, definitely active. Don't have as much contact with them as I'd like because they're out in Cooper Township. But yeah, we'll work with them on neighborhood projects and things like that. We're doing a lot of streets projects that is sustainability adjacent. So you've probably been through towns like this. We essentially have a highway running through the middle of downtown, just one way, 3-lane strip that blasts right through our downtown and connects kind of the townships. So we're working to convert that to a 2-way strip to make it more like a city street. In the middle of that, adding a lot of bike lanes. That's been kind of it's been contentious. But folks are coming around now. But yeah, we're working on the bike infrastructure and the non-motorized transportation piece here in downtown Kalamazoo.
Sam, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what actually wondering about if you have some regional relationships, you know, I mean, Kalamazoo is, yeah, it's definitely dense, but there's a lot of open space between Kazoo and Battle Creek, and of course Portage is right next to you, which is all also quite dense. But there's a lot of open space around the area, and so I'm just curious, you know, how your relationships are with, you know, the county and some of these other nearby cities. Fort Custer, boy, that place is open. Of course, that gets into federal government connections, but they're kind of on board with the climate issue. So I'm just curious about how that all works.
Yeah. So I have a counterpart at the county who came on about the same time that I did, Taylor Van Winkle. And that's Taylor's whole job there, is to work with the rural landowners and try to figure out siting and things like that. But again, it's just the way things are in Michigan. Consumers, you know, they're the only game in town. So if consumers want to put in a solar field there, they'll do it. As far as the city, we're pretty staunchly against starting our own utility. Public services doesn't really have an appetite for that. Again, we do the wastewater for the entire city or entire county, and that tends to be enough for us. So yeah, I'd have to, you know, Taylor works on siting. I kind of work within the city, and we have to kind of punt and just kind of hope consumers puts in more of these large scale solar fields. So yeah, the city's role, I help where I can. Like I'm working on one of those landfills there, trying to work with some solar developers. But yeah, from a city standpoint, all I can really do is zoning and kind of make connections. It's hard for me to drive any type of real change. Maybe when I work for consumers one day, when I jump ship, then I can do more change from the inside. But here I have another, some more, yeah. Oops. Interesting slides. So when we talked about kind of everything being, every city being different, I'll show you why we're different. Do you all get the Ann Arbor comparisons, or why can't we be like Ann Arbor and all that nonsense too? Or is that just me?
Several of us are. Ann Arbor's been a been a leader, obviously, for many of our initiatives.
Yes, yeah, no, they're a leader. I'll piggyback on any of their stuff, but I get a lot of complaints from people, citizens generally. Why can't Ann Arbor do this? Why can't Ann Arbor do that? They have a millage. We don't here in Kalamazoo. They have 12 staff people. Kalamazoo has me. So I just like to point those things out. And then, so when I ran through my greenhouse gas emissions report, well, we'll look at the community too. You all get all this. Climate's changing, greenhouse gases are rising. So I was able to get energy data from Consumers Energy. They gave me zip code data, and it didn't quite align with the borders in Kalamazoo, but I just used the 3 zip codes that were most inside Kalamazoo. And I was thinking it'd be similar to national data, where you see transportation's like a third and energy production's a third. But in Kalamazoo, energy use dominates, 83%, so that's gas and electric. So, you know, scope one there and scope 2. So when you're looking at the Kalamazoo community, you know, everything in the city boundaries, this is how our emissions break down. 2.1 million metric tons. And so much of this is just energy use. So again, I'm sympathetic to, yeah, these solar panels. We need to get solar panels there. When folks start talking about bikes, I'm like, you know, that's there. It's not as big of an issue here for us. Energy production, that's Western Michigan University's power plant. So they're contributing 3% to power that campus there. But yeah, so this really struck me when I did this report. I thought it would be a little bit more even and kind of what you see nationally, and that was just naive. Yeah. And then it's mostly scope 2. But yeah, some of this, yeah, here's the zip codes that I used. So I was able to use this zip code here, 08, 01, and 07. So this 06 wasn't included. I couldn't find a good way to kind of get a decent estimate. I could have maybe done parcels and divided it by use, but there's just so much going on here. So I left those out. And then the way it breaks down. So Kalamazoo is pretty interesting. So here's the zip codes, but so I looked at the energy use. I broke it down by, you know, sector here, I think I called it. So this is what we need to tackle. So there's just so much industrial energy use in Kalamazoo. So we can do all the kind of neighborhood behavior change type things we want. But we just have this behemoth kind of behind us for any initiatives. So it's how do we get these industries on board? In Kalamazoo, just quick Googling, one of the industries has a net zero pledge. That's Zoetis. Everybody else is kind of doing their own thing. Yeah, so that's my white whale that I have to figure out how to attack. But I guess, maybe a bonus here, most of that is electricity. So again, we clean up the grid, get things changed there, this will start to drop a little bit. But we'll see. But, as we decarbonize and go to heat pumps and things like that and get off natural gas, we'll go back to electricity, and that still might grow a little bit. This is Western's power plant. When gas is cheaper to buy, they just buy it from consumers and don't produce it. Otherwise, they produce pretty consistently above 60,000 metric tons CO2e. And I'll just show you, might see a hand. Sorry, I was looking at the time. I was like, boy, I've only wasted 36 minutes, so I had to chew up some time. So I kind of looked at other cities' community greenhouse gas reports to try to get comparison. So again, energy use is always going to be high in the Midwest. Seattle was fun because now you can see the power of renewable energy. So they use a lot of hydroelectric. So their energy use is down, but a lot more people, so the transportation's up. Lansing was here and Concord is here. So yeah, it's fun to see that trend. But you want to do a comparison, and this is why it's just apples and oranges comparing any city or township. So this is City of Kalamazoo in the blue, Ann Arbor in the green. Commercial is about the same. Residential is higher. More people live in Ann Arbor, but they essentially they report zero industrial emissions, and then we're sitting here. So they can do all that they want with residential programs and green, housing ordinances and things like that. We can too, but we'll just keep chipping away at the smallest piece of our pie, and this just kind of sits there. Institutionally, they beat us pretty handily there with Ann Arbor.
There's a question, Justin.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to cut you off.
I'm just stalling essentially. I realized, yeah. I have.
Wondering, Justin, what's the city doing with electric vehicles, if anything?
Yep. So we've increased our electrical vehicle fleet by 200% since I started, meaning we went from 0 to 2. So we're getting there. For a long time, the city had no electric vehicles because we had no charging stations, and we had no charging stations because we had no electric vehicles. So we were stuck in this chicken or egg type thing. But when the community sustainability plan came along, that plan set a goal of 100 electric vehicles by 2050. Or maybe it's not 2050, but it set a goal for the number of vehicles we needed to have. So with that plan and that plan being approved by the city commission, we now had something to fall back on when it was time to purchase new vehicles. So public services purchased 2, I think they're Lightnings, Chevy Lightnings for use for them, and we'll continue to purchase more electric vehicles. We're working on trapping those direct pay dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act. So with that program, even though we're a city and we don't file taxes, we can file kind of a fake tax return and capture some of those benefits that regular citizens would get. So we'll get $7,500 back for those trucks and up to 30% of the cost to install those charging stations. So we're getting there. We haven't been there for a while, but we're moving in the right direction. And then I can just watch my energy usage tick up as we buy vehicles, but then the gas will go down. So we'll see how that comes out. It'll come out in our favor, but everything's going to change again.
This is really interesting. You've got certainly a lot of experience. Sarah, you got another question?
Yeah. So in terms of that industrial, I know they're private places, but are you able to see and break those down to see which industries in your area are using the most or where they're at with that?
Kind of. So it's zip code. So I can look by zip code and you can assume. I mean, I know the big industries here. What I'm really interested in, and I haven't been able to get good data on it, is indoor marijuana grow operations, and just how intense those facilities are with the energy use. Because I assume the HVAC's running all the time, lights everywhere. So when I see some of these spikes, and I know that there's some of those facilities in some of those zip codes. So I did go back to consumers and I asked if I could have 10 years of that data so I could analyze it, and they said no, because it would be too telling. And I don't know if it's them. I mean, that's kind of my small, kind of just really, I don't know, weak hypothesis. But we have Graphic Packaging International here, which is a huge energy user. Zoetis is, they do, if your dog takes heartworm pills, it's probably a Zoetis pill. They're research and development facilities downtown here. So we just, we have some very energy intense. We have a lot of metal recycling facilities that use a lot of energy too. So yeah, I don't know who it is. I have no ideas. I have zip codes. And I'd like to know more about the marijuana indoor grow operations and how much energy they use.
Have you tried asking them directly?
Yes, and they said no.
Yeah, I know somebody that works at a paper company, and I don't remember what it's called. I think it starts with a W, in Kalamazoo area. So I figure, well, that's one of a big sucker of energy.
Yeah, and it's that balance there. Like, we want. I mean, the most sustainable city is a city that no one lives in and no one works in. But that's not a city. So yeah, how do we kind of balance that? So I was thinking, hoping with this report, we'd see the forest for the trees. Like, I don't think there's this shadowy cabal of cigar smoking gentlemen that are looking to raise industrial emissions or CO2 emissions. I think everyone just kind of, they're in their lane, they're doing their own thing, they're not seeing the bigger picture. So I'm trying to work with the Chamber of Commerce down here in Southwest Michigan first, kind of just raise awareness and then make them aware of these Inflation Reduction Act programs that they could take advantage of, save some money, go green or decarbonize, and then see where they can go from there. But
yeah, that's what I was wondering, is if you could ask the industrial companies to come together and just have some dialogue and see let's talk about this. Let's talk about ways that we could do it.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we're in the process of doing.
Cool. That's awesome.
A couple communities, regions have sustainable business forums that might be, I don't know if there's one like that in Kalamazoo region, but
yep. Yeah, we have one of those. So I'll say about that. I'm in attendance always. You can infer who else is in attendance. If I'm this down on it, I'm saying that I'm always in attendance. Read between the lines there. No one else shows up. Too coy on that. So yeah, how do we figure that one out? I don't know.
well,
Do you have any environmental groups, and like, I'm into community organizing and stuff, or do you have any environmental groups that could encourage those places to get involved? And I mean, just, do you have stuff like that?
Yes, we have plenty. Environmental groups coming out of my ears.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't want to turn into a therapy session. I don't know if they'd be interested in that. Our environmental groups tend to be interested in kind of more, protests might be too strong of a word, but more like demonstration type stuff. The last one that they had was a demonstration in downtown Kalamazoo to ban fossil fuels. So they're more kind of broad, big picture type stuff. These kind of narrow, practical might sound too judgy on their work. In the weeds type stuff, I don't know how interested they'd be in. They've all seen this report. I've talked to all these folks about this report.
Not actionable things.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Yeah.
they're a local first group.
Yeah, that's the Southwest Michigan. What is it? I think it's First is in the title, but they're the big one down here. Yeah, Southwest Michigan First. Yeah, they sponsor the Sustainable Business Forum. And again, we just have to figure out how to get attendance up. So right now, like 2 companies tend to join, the rest is kind of city employees. And the 2 companies that join are outside of the actual city, so they're not even in my report. They're in townships. And we have the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum, but they don't operate in Kalamazoo. I guess there was some friction between those 2 groups years ago, and now they kind of stake their territory. But I've worked with West Michigan. They're a decent group too, but I don't know what their attendance is like either.
Sounds like you've done a lot in you've only been in that position for little over a year, or when did you start again?
Yeah, May of last year.
So that's pretty impressive.
It's
Justin.
fun. Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, like I said, Alexa, having a My Healthy Climate Corps person helps out. Are you all getting one of those or interested in one of those? I guess I could try to sell one of those positions too. It's nice. It builds your capacity. You basically get a full-time person for $7,000 a year. But
We should explore that, I think.
yeah,
Brian is our resident planner here. Brian, do you think we can hire a sustainability planner?
Well, we
You're
had,
sort of one.
no, I'm not. I'm the principal planner on the staff, and then we have an associate planner as well. And then, so we budgeted for a planning intern at 20. I mean, this isn't exactly apples to apples. We budgeted for a planning intern for 20 hours a week for the summer, and that money is still sitting there because the first person we offered it to didn't call our HR person back 3 times. And then so we moved on to the second place person who came in and said, "Oh, I misunderstood. I thought this was a full-time position," and turned it down after going through the interview process. So
yeah,
it might be something to talk about. Especially if, Leroy, you're still talking about career stuff, so we can talk off channel later.
Well, yeah, I'm planning on scaling back my hours next year.
Well, if
but
you're planning on scaling back, then maybe it's something to talk about, but maybe it's through parks or something. I don't know.
my healthy climate program might be a way to stretch those dollars as well. That's a good idea, Justin.
yeah, it's basically AmeriCorps. And again, it's been helpful for me for sure, especially because their focus is on Michigan's My Healthy Climate Plan, and they like to see a lot of outreach and that. So this position, lets me stay in the office and kind of crunch these numbers, and Alexa can go out.
Hey, Justin, it was a pleasure meeting you. In a former lifetime, I did a tour of duty through Kalamazoo, so it was fun to reminisce a little bit.
Oh, really?
I'm gonna bounce because I got a 10 o'clock meeting with a resident, and I'm gonna go get ready for that. But if you want to follow up with Leroy on this, Leroy, we can talk next week. I'm not here tomorrow, Friday, so I'll talk to you later. And nice meeting you all. Bye bye.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, it will be interesting to hear how you interact with your My Healthy Climate person. And do you have an environmental commission?
Yes, yeah. So I oversee what's called the Environmental Concerns Committee. So they're all appointed by the City Commission, and they meet once a month to discuss various environmental topics.
Do you enjoy that part of your job? Or would you like to assign that to your My Healthy Climate person?
No, I wouldn't do that to them. I like Alexa too much to give them. No, again, it's the same thing. It's just how do you work with a group who's called the Environmental Concerns Committee, and concerns already there is kind of highlighting, I don't know, their mindset. But also, like, if you look in their bylaws, their role is to advise the City Commission. And the City Commission tends not to ask them to advise on anything. So they go back to the concerns piece, and they're trying to find solutions and problems, but nobody's really asking them to work on any city initiatives. I just took that over in January, so I'm still trying to figure out how we best work with them. Before they were in public services, and I think they feel a little neglected. So yeah, those are all on YouTube and online if you want to watch some of those. But some of it's difficult because their concerns are real, but the concerns aren't anything that the city has anything to do with necessarily. The air quality is monitored and enforced at the state level. So we can bring up those issues, but it's not actionable at the city necessarily. But yeah, but it's a great group. They're volunteers. They're absolutely happy to be there. We just got to figure out a way to best use them. I don't know if I've cracked that code yet.
Where are you saying you're hearing of those concerns? Like, who is that through? The volunteers is through who?
This is the Environmental Concerns Committee. So it's citizens appointed by the City Commission that meet once a month to discuss environmental issues in the city. So it's kind of like, it's a more formal board. in their bylaws, they were charged with making recommendations to the city commission. Michigan had a lot of these because in the 70s, it was all, they were like generally like water quality boards or things like that. And then over time, they just morphed into broadly environmental boards. But yeah.
So is that who's helping you know where the concerns are with environmental things? Or are you finding that, like, how are you? I think that's one of the things that I struggle with is really understanding what the issues are. Is like, is it flooding? Is it water quality? I mean, like, just an overall of what are the issues that need to be tackled?
Yep. That can be a spot. So there's public comments at every one of those board meetings, and they have their own subcommittees that they're working on. But generally, yeah, folks email me. I kind of scour social media after meetings for folks to kind of say, I watch a lot of city commission meetings where a lot of the public will come in and talk about X, Y, and Z before the meetings. So yeah, just try to be attuned. So I guess sometimes I seek out concerns, try to figure out what people are talking about, and sometimes I just get calls or email about those concerns.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, sounds like you do a lot. I hope you'll come back and join us again, Justin. And every other week or so, we have an open dialogue. It's pretty much fair game, but these have been going on every week for the past probably 3.5 years or more. It's kind of an interesting format to get people together because there's not really a leader. I'm more of a facilitator, but and the suggestions for speakers come from the participants usually. So
Yeah.
The open dialogue is just sort of a interesting way to kind of self-organize a little bit.
Yeah, so this was neat. It's fun. Appreciate talking about the stuff to, yeah, people who care.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Have a great Wednesday. Any other parting comments from anybody?
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
Thank
thanks for having me. Thanks.
Really appreciate it. And yeah, do come back and I'll see people next week.
Yeah,
But
and you can share my email if anyone wants any follow-ups or any other questions. So
sounds good. In a couple weeks, we're going to be hearing about the East Side Compost Initiative in
yeah.
Lansing. And then later in the month, we will have Tom Stanton will be with us talking a little bit about Cafe, Citizens for something. What does Cafe stand for?
Capital Area Friends of the Environment.
Thank you. Some of you might know Tom Stanton from his energy work. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.